So, fun fact, I had made this entire video and had it in Premiere, ready to export, when, I lost the SD card that the audio was recorded onto. So, here we go again, I guess. Before you ask, hey, aren't you wearing the same thing you wore in the last video? Maybe. So I wanted to talk today about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's a good movie, I really like it. A lot of people have said that nothing happens in this movie, but I really disagree with that. And I think, well, this is nothing happens in this movie is a criticism that I hear about a lot of movies, and it's almost never accurate. Usually the person just didn't really understand the movie or what the theme was. I've heard people say that there's no central theme in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and that's just not true. Oftentimes, when you talk about a conflict in a narrative, it can be phrased as a dramatic question, like, will Darth Vader be defeated by the end of the movie? That's Star Wars, obviously. Will Frodo destroy the ring? That's the Lord of the Rings. And the dramatic question for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is, will Rick Dalton be able to successfully transition from the kind of macho, rugged leading man of the 50s to the more sensitive, long-haired type of leading man of the 70s? That's the question, and it's pretty low stakes. The framework of the movie is based around that question. I think the theme of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is that depictions can be more important than facts. And this theme is present in almost every scene of the movie, but I'm just going to point out a couple of examples. So in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, we see a lot of different westerns being depicted. There's the TV show that Rick used to be on, and there's the Lancer TV show that he's like the villain of the week on, that you see him like filming. All of these westerns show what we think of as the cowboy, like the typical Anglo-white, English-speaking cowboy. But that's not entirely accurate to what we know about the history of the American West. Most of the U.S. west of the Mississippi River was at one point part of Mexico, including all or parts of Texas, Oklahoma, California, Nevada, Utah, Colorado, Oregon, Idaho, and Wyoming. Spanish-speaking Mexicans of Spanish descent, mestizos, who are people of mixed Spanish and Indian ancestry, mulattoes, who are people of mixed Indian and black ancestry, and indigenous people themselves made up a large patchwork of the West, along with the hundreds of thousands of Chinese, Japanese, and Filipinos who came to the U.S. mainly to work on the railroads, but also became cowboys themselves. I should also point out that Quentin Tarantino is a bit of a history buff. He hasn't made a movie since Death Proof, I guess, that isn't a period piece in some way. So he's obviously very into history, and you'll see him in interviews reference reading about history. And he's included black cowboys in Django Unchained and in Hateful Eight. But in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, there's only a few Mexican characters, and they're all relegated to kind of subservient roles. There's like the valet and the doorman who works at the movie theater where Sharon Tate goes. I don't think this is Quentin being racist. Obviously, Los Angeles is a part of the history of the American West. It is the most, it is in the major southwest of the country. When Los Angeles was founded as a pueblo, it was founded by 42 pobladores, which is the name for a person who lives in a pueblo. There were 42 of them, and only 2 were white. The rest were black or Native American or some combination of that. If Tarantino knows that black cowboys are a thing, and he knows that they were specifically, if he knows that people of color were specifically important in Los Angeles, why did he exclude them from this kind of story? Why did he put them in these kinds of roles in this movie? like I said, I don't think he's being racist. I think he's making a specific point that by having these westerns that come out that perpetuate a certain ideal, a false ideal, that the white cowboys, who are English-speaking white cowboys that did all this stuff, is kind of perpetuating the same racism of the day. I think that's what he's saying. The more obvious version of this theme is with the Mansons. Terrorists around the world, and I would say that the Manson family is definitely a terrorist organization. Terrorists base their targets normally on the fear they want to instill. 9/11 wouldn't be as impactful if it was a random office building in Nebraska, right? And the Sharon Tate murders, or the Tate LaBianca murders as they're called, if the Manson family had just killed a few random people, they definitely wouldn't have been as big a part of the culture as they are. So even though they only, I mean, it's tragic because they killed anybody, but even though they only killed a few people, they still have a huge public presence in the mind of the people, even though it happened at this point over 50 years ago. That's because they engineered the depiction. They chose specific targets, knowing that it would instill fear in all of the people in the media. I think he's saying, if you don't pay attention to the terrorists' goals, if you know that they're just trying to instill fear in you, then you can take away their impact somewhat. Here's the third and final example I'll go through for this video. Throughout the film, we constantly hear references to a rumor that Cliff killed his wife. And this makes it difficult for Cliff to find a job. In fact, at the beginning of the movie, he says, I think, 7 or 8 years. He says, I haven't had a job as your stuntman in 7 or 8 years. And we see a short snippet of the trip where he supposedly killed his wife on. We don't get that answer, whether or not he killed her intentionally, the entire movie. It's left ambiguous as to whether he did or not. At the end of the movie, we do see that he physically is able to have killed a woman, because he kills the one woman by hitting her in the face with the dog food. The audience doesn't know whether or not Cliff killed his wife, but ultimately it doesn't matter, because in the eyes of the public he did. The depiction that he did kill his wife, in fact, completely changes his ability to get a job, because the depiction is more important than the fact, which is that we don't know that he did. There are a ton of other examples I could give for this movie, and this theme is seriously present in pretty much every scene. But yeah, this is just kind of to refute anybody who thinks that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood doesn't have a theme. That's what I think the theme is, that depictions are more important than facts. So yeah, I guess if you want to watch videos like this in the future, my lighting is really terrible and I'm sorry about that. Just let me know, I guess. Subscribe or whatever. Alright.